We are back for another episode of Project Peak Performance. Today, I'm joined by Dave Gibbons, Rob Brady, and Ian Macbeth to review and share our key takeaways from an episode that I had the great pleasure of co-hosting with, for me, one of the most insightful people I've ever had the opportunity to spend a few hours with. Stephen James Copp is a genius in my mind, but takes such complex scenarios and simplifies them to make them so digestible and relatable for normal people. He talks on a level with your likes of Jordan Peterson, makes it really digestible and understandable. So I had the great pleasure of co-hosting it. I was in the moment. I was getting lots of insights off camera. Guys, Dave, let's come to you first. What were your top highlights from the episode?
Oh, mate, there was a few. I really liked the episode, to be honest with you, and I can't wait for the second part. So if anybody hasn't read the description, by the way, and listened to the first episode, it does cut off a little bit at the end, but that's because there's part 2 coming. But there was quite a lot, mate. I tell you one thing that really struck me, and it's got nothing to do with psychology or anything else. Is it just me? I know you said this actually in the podcast. Does his life seem like mirror image of yours? I was listening to it and I'm thinking, oh my God, all the things that's going on here, not exactly the same stories, but very, very similar happened to me. Even like from the school thing, this, that, and the other. So anyway, I just wanted to say that out there. I didn't know whether you guys, I really aligned with what he was saying and where he came from and little things like, I remember doing an IQ test years ago. It wasn't as high as 138, but I was low 130s. Now, this is coming from a guy who left school with 0 and was told by everybody in school that I would never amount to nothing. And yeah, it was just, it was mad. But yeah, what was my biggest takeaway on this? It was possibly a simple one, which was the calmness, the co-regulating, he called it, when he's speaking to his clients, how he co-regulates and how over a period of, let's say, 12 weeks, which is, from the science we've got now, the time required to make change in the brain. But the difference, once you're regulating your sympathetic nervous system and you're acting from a calm state, what that does to everything else, and the downsides of what happens when we're dysregulated and we're allowing the emotions and traumas that have been built up in our brains to take control of our lives. I think that'll be quite eye-opening to quite a lot of people, how he said that and how it opened up, because it was really relatable and it was really understandable. So sorry, mate, I rambled on again there, but that was mine.
No, I think it's a really good point and a good thread that you pull on. I think the fact that he opened with his backstory was really important for people to be able to then connect. I would say that I was the same as you, sitting there listening to him and thinking, I went through the same path that you did through school and everything else. What about you, Rob?
Well, I was about to say, like, I found it really interesting because from a 100% what Dave was saying about that, like from school, disruptive, not really understanding it. I even look at my children in the same capacity of like how they're probably going to be brought up in the same educational system. And I was listening to it in the gym and it was just very relatable, very calming, listening to it as well, very understanding. From my coaching background as well, I completely get the concept and I can see why he does what he does. And actually, the one part actually which I loved about it was his pivot into his new calling, which I got and very understood on that part. Second one was where he talks about him being a psychology-based like life coach. It's a different approach to therapeutic counselling, which and the reason why you pulled that said about the first 15 minutes he talks to someone, you don't get that in counselling. That's the reason why people struggle with that part. And this is the same conversation I have with my partner Kel, who's trained to be a therapist. And I've said to her, like, how can someone be incongruent, like give themselves to you to feel comfortable when you're putting a barrier up to the person that you're trying to work with? Whereas I feel like with Stephen, because of those 15 minutes, how are you doing, how's your day, what's going on, etc., those are the things that make it a lot more of a better connection, how you can have deeper, more meaningful conversations, and also, I don't know, experiences when you probably work with someone like him, and probably the reason why he's so successful.
It's a lot more of a natural flow, isn't it? It's like he says, he's co-regulating you on topics that you're particularly interested in. He admitted himself off camera, he's not big into the football, but he will talk to Alex, because obviously, yeah, he coaches Alex. He'll talk to his clients about the football, about interests and hobbies that they have, because that's part of the co-regulation process. And I must admit, I even said it in the pod. When I listened back, I was like, oh yeah, that actually happened. I just sat in complete silence for 20 minutes listening to him, because his tone and his whole demeanor is almost quite hypnotic.
Yeah.
I'm so immersed in the way he communicates. What about you, Ian? What did you get from it?
The fish. Like, I'm all over that. The fish was like, that stopped me dead in my run. Absolutely. Yeah. If you want to care for the koi carp, look after the water and not the fish. That's fucking brilliant. Like, loved that. Absolutely loved it. I was just like that relates to like so many things that we talk about. Take care of the environment, whether you relate it to kids, to look after the kid, you look after the environment. If the fish is your business, look after the environment and it will look after the business. If you relate it to yourself, like if you want to look after yourself, look after your environment, what you put in the water, how you treat the water, how you regulate the water, and it will look after yourself. That was it for me. That's all I needed. Like the fish. Let's do that. Let's just do the fish thing. Like I was
be more fish.
Yeah, I don't even need part two. I'm done. Like part one was good. I'll take that I'll use that all the time.
You got to know that Ian, because that's going to be a bit confusing. People go, well, right, it's all about the fish. It's all about the fish. Like,
I mean, the story, the backdrop of the story, I think he said like he was really into koi carp. And he even like traveled, like, yeah, that's what you can see from the backdrop if you're watching on James's background. But I think he said he went, was it Japan or somewhere like that? Yeah, he went to Japan to find out from like some master koi carp carer, like how do you get the best out of the fish? How do you get the vibrant colors? How do you turn them into the most valuable and healthy fish that you possibly could? And the guy was like, just look after the water. I mean, he probably could have phone called him rather than go to Japan to get that info, but like still magic moment for me. That was really, really good. And I've used that actually since then, to be fair as well. Like I've used that analogy from a business point of view and from a child point of view. I thought that was great. And I don't know if anyone else kind of felt it, but a lot of what we've done over the first year of Project Peak Performance and how we've articulated different dimensions and stuff, it seemed like about 3 or 4 of them he wrapped up in summary, like of what we were talking about. We was talking about the trauma, big trauma, little micro traumas on a daily basis. We literally spoke about that the week before, didn't we? About mental health, with people that maybe struggle because of the one big massive trauma that they haven't been able to handle or unravel or talk about or get a handle on, or the micro traumas. He was talking about you get a big electric bill, or someone said something that embarrassed you, or you just had a moment that day where it was a bad hair day, for example, and they're all little traumas that hit us, and when they compound it can turn into something quite significant. So the fish, the trauma, I'm in. Yeah, let's go part 2. I'm ready.
You wait on part 2.
Yeah. I tell you something that I picked up on. I had a realization when I was listening to that exact part when James asked the question with regards to the pressures, the traumas, working at elite levels. And I had a bit of a realization. So I know you guys know this, you may have forgot, but I've had like shitloads of near-death experiences. Oh, I'm not dead is unbelievable. I mean, 3 notable ones: car crash rolling down an embankment into a river upside down. I got punched in Manchester when I was 15, fractured skull, blood clot in my brain, intensive care for 6 weeks. And when I was 9, I fell out of a tree and cut my main artery in my arm and nearly bled to death. And when I was listening to the story, I was thinking about this. And at first, honestly, I was kind of like, nah, I've had loads of them and they've not bothered me. But what I realized was what I've actually done is I've taken proof from my trauma to re-establish my belief system that I can do anything. It was like, not even that can stop me. I've nearly died fucking 3 times. Nobody can stop this. I'm able to go through this pain. I'm able to go through this treacherous water and come out smelling of roses on the other end. So actually what happened to me, and it's beautiful when you look at this, because how people can take the same information and take it in two different ways. For me, I took that as, you're unbreakable. You can do this shit. Whereas other people may take that differently and go on a different route. But yeah, so I literally went from to okay, that kind of makes sense. But what a huge thing that is, you know, to be able to take that.
Where he's talking about the reprogramming of the mind, and obviously had, you know, a catastrophic moment that I can't even sort of picture, where he lost his son, and then kind of basically sold up everything and just decided to go, you know, live in a barn on the beach and run every day and read books every day and just like have a reset, effectively try and work through that catastrophic moment in his life until he was ready. And then he was like, yeah, I don't need to run anymore. I'm ready to go back into the world. That was, you know, what you're talking about there. You got two options, haven't you? You go that direction or you go that direction. I don't think it's as simple as glass half empty, half full scenario, but how you handle something that you can't control will dictate the future of your life, effectively. And we've seen that and learnt that time and time again, even going way back to the first podcast that we did with Emma Pallant-Brown, you know, where she was a sprinter. I think she was a 400-meter sprinter. She got injured and then she ended up being a duathlete, you know, like, or a triathlete and a duathlete, and got into the water and stuff. Like, we've seen it. Yeah, Jessie, I was watching the Diamond League on Saturday. Jessie, that you had on with Dan, you know, where she's now 400-meter hurdler, and she was racing. She came 5th, and you know, you talk about her with the pivot. So whether it's those moments or whether it's, you know, kind of even more catastrophic moments like what he experienced, it just shows that if you deal with it in the right way for you and your tailored version, you can come out of it with at least purpose and drive, which is clearly what he's got, which I thought was quite inspirational, to be fair.
When you look at he talks about neuroplasticity. One of the previous guests we haven't had back on yet was Claire Lidjar, and she deals with her main enjoyment is around child behaviour and child trauma, and that's what her main speciality is. And I've gone on dozens and dozens of walks with me, but she talks about the reprogramming of your brain through neuroplasticity. And it's a case of having to almost backtrack the steps back to a certain position and then form a new route. And a lot of people don't take the back steps to enable a new route. They stay on the pre-existing route and they wonder why they're in that same cycle. And there's actually the part of, obviously, when you look at neuroplasticity and also therapeutic parts, there's certain therapeutic methodology you can have where almost you reprogram the brain back to a certain position to then reprogram it how it should operate. Mm-hmm. So absolutely fascinating. She talked to me about, obviously, like, especially when you've got children who've got very complex traumas have had in their life and their adult forms or teenager forms, you have to go back for that therapeutic to try and find that new route.
It's interesting that you say that, though, and Stephen definitely articulates this in a much more eloquent way than I'm going to share it. But my processing of it, if you like, is that, and it's in something I'm reading at the minute, it's that whole gap between stimulus and response. It's that whole gap between what's happened and how people react, and that ability in the middle there to make a decision and make a choice, and having that consciousness to go, I've always reacted this way to that thing, and that's not healthy. So therefore, if I really sit in this for a moment and think about that thing, I can choose how I respond. So if road rage is a great example. Someone cuts me up, typical response for most people is to get angry and to get upset. But to what end? So it's that conscious choice in that moment that guy that's cut you up, what difference does it really make? All right, I've lost 3 seconds on my journey. Really, does it make that much of a difference? And so that whole stimulus response piece, I think, is so impactful. And I totally agree with what you're saying, Rob, but I also think that some people have the stimulus of, let's say, childhood trauma, whatever that shape that took. Some people will harness that and it will fuel them. Others will wear it like a cloak of weighing them down.
Yeah.
And so that stimulus response piece, that choice in the middle is so powerful.
Do you know what's really interesting? Sorry, Dave. Like, he talked about in the book about taking the knee, and that actually came through with Ian Middleton's Fear Bubble. If anyone's ever listened to that, he talks about taking the knee and that. And I've helped a lot of clients who struggle with the stresses of your brain running away with yourself. Like, the hut in front of you is where the fear is, but you're outside the hut. You're not even being attacked yet. So any response you're trying to go to, think about taking a knee. And I've massively taken it forward in my life, going like, right, these moments now, I take the knee and I just breathe just for a few minutes and work out whether it's basically, when you really look at it, it's like expectations versus reality is one of my phrases I always have. Is the expectations of the reality that's in it? Is it happening in reality? You're still stuck in expectations, like. And the main part is acceptance. That's the bit where you're saying about James, like acceptance of small things, larger things, and acceptance then builds self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
That's the bit that people have a blinker to.
Yeah,
like, I'm getting angry over this car situation and blah. It's like, no, actually, there's a greater thing behind your brain that's you're angry over that you haven't dealt with. So surface stuff is just basically causing you to be angry. And that's the reason why I always say to people, if someone's angry out there, it's really hard because people get annoyed with me on this. Oh, that person's a dickhead, or that person's really. It's like, yeah, but what's going on with them? Why are they that way? I don't care. They're acting like that way. It's no, there's obviously something why that's happening. So let's look at that. And especially when you look at your team environments, when you're working with lots of people and your environments, we talk about that, looking after, like Ian said, like the fish element to an environment. If your team member's angry, your team member's stressed, your team member's upset, the action is just the vent of a greater thing behind them. So you need to help support in getting that resolved.
Yeah. I think what I was going to say there is he did actually sum it up quite well as to what you were saying, Rob, and it was audit your past and author your future. That was the words that were used, if I'm correct. And I think what you're saying and where you are, James, and what you said on this is, I think you need to audit it. I think you need to audit what's gone on in the past before you even have realization of what the present is, which then would allow you to make the steps for the future. So if we jump into this, and I think this is the problem, a lot of the times we just don't know. People who know better do better is one of the sayings I love. And it goes back to what Rob was saying there. But I think number one is to find that you're finding your life or your day-to-day routines troublesome. They're not serving you, which is what he said. Is this serving me well? What I'm doing, what I'm thinking, does it serve you well? And then to go back and try and figure out these problems, it's really difficult to do. It's going to be difficult to do off one podcast. It's going to be difficult to do with self-help books and with counselling from the NHS because of what Rob said and Stephen said as well. It's very, very underfunded. So there's nothing there, but you do need that second person to relay this stuff to. And the only thing that I know that works bar that is journaling, which again he kind of mentioned, and it's just to get it out onto paper, because once it's in here, it's one of a billion thoughts. It's like grains of rice. You're looking for one and there's billions of them, so you never see them. And the only way to let them settle, or a snow globe is better, is to let that settle down so you can see the clearer picture on the inside.
But I think he articulated it again very well in the way he delivered it, in so much as self-awareness has to be the start point. Because if someone is just naturally a very angry person, they're angry at the life, they're angry at the world, they're angry at their kids, their partner, their business partners, whatever, unless they take a moment to go, I'm a bit of a dick and I don't want to be that guy anymore, or that girl, I don't want to be that human being, unless they have that moment, then everything else that can precede it or go after it becomes irrelevant, right? So there has to be that awareness of a problem before problem can be addressed.
Change always comes
from
from within. That's what I've always said. Change always comes from within.
Yeah.
Has to be starting from that day one.
And the desire to change.
Yeah, desire to change, yeah.
I always remember the phrase that came from the mental health course that I did, where we became mental health first aiders, which was, I've mentioned it before, but perspective is someone's reality. And I think he's talking about it a lot. And actually we had Chris Hunt in with the group recently, that was obviously on the podcast, The Royal Marine. And he was kind of just rephrasing things and kind of getting people to think of just slightly different perspectives on the same situation. And it is so powerful when you can effectively program your mind to go down the solution path rather than the problem path, or, you know, just being in that place where you go and look at things in a slightly different way. The other thing that I thought was quite interesting that I wanted to move the convo onto is like what actually is smart, because he was talking about like at school and, you know, being below average or actually being called a retard, to be fair, in those sort of days. And it got me thinking, you know, then he did his IQ test, etc., and he got accepted into uni. And obviously, he's a very successful man now and coaches successful people to be a better level of themselves, a better performing level of themselves. It just got me thinking, like everyone's just had their end of year kids reports, right, from school and stuff like that. Like, what are we really looking out for in those school reports? And
can I intercept this one, Ian? Sorry.
yeah,
Because it's actually really a problem because the kids are 2 years old and I've got twins. So they are identical by day, but boy, girl. And obviously Kel having her teacher background and her child behavioural stuff, she was like, do you want to read the reports? I was like, no. She's like, why, you're not interested in them? I was like, I don't care the perception on what someone is perceived as what they feel as my children and whether they're smart or not, and they're reporting. Because Kel was getting a bit frustrated because she was like, oh, well, they're saying Ted's slow in his thingy, but we know he's different to that. I was like, yeah, so I don't care. I don't care. Like, I look at them two individual people and I'll base on what they think they are in this world, and I'll just encourage them with how to learn, how to be more confident in themselves, how to build resilience and stuff like that. But it's weird because from a academic side, she's all like, you need to read the report. I was like, no, I don't want to read the report.
Yeah. It's true though, isn't it? Because people are intelligent in different ways, I think. You know, people are experts in different fields and people are brighter in certain areas. You might have one of the most intelligent, you know, kind of IT engineers, you know, that's an absolute super geek, incredible, you know, at school, full sets of A's and just can do things with coding and stuff that we would never dream of. And we would look at that as a way of saying, well, that guy's really smart. But then if maybe James, for example, you asked him how to edit a video or do a social media campaign, or Rob, you asked him to look at the best way to create content for a nurture journey, or I asked him how to plan for a 24-hour race, he's got no chance. So are we smarter or is he smarter? Or is there just people are smart at certain segments and there is no overall, you are smart, you are retard, that's it? Like, that's not a thing. No. It could, because that's not the picture that's painted in life, is it? It's a hierarchy of intelligence.
For me, it's like a sentence and I love it. And it's like asking a fish to climb a tree. At the end of the day, people are experts in their field. Some people are extremely emotionally intelligent. Some people are extremely book smart. But what I think the problem, and it's a dangerous path, we seem to go there a lot at the minute, but fuck it. The other day, Dave took the gloves off, so I'm going to do the same. The school system sets everyone up to follow a very black and white, you pass or you fail, and failure is deemed final. They set you up for this adulthood that isn't real according to the way you're taught. And so everyone believes that you are smart based on your academic ability. Bullshit.
Mm. Yeah. When you look at it, the system that they was created was from the Industrial Revolution.
And that is not relevant to today.
It was set up for you to go and work in a factory and follow the processes they tell you. That's the reason why it was conformity based. And with the rise of neurodiverse children, people are opening up social media, we've got internet. Like, I was just showing Kel the other day that Google released a thing on, well, no, the Apple released a thing where you can actually just draw and it calculates everything out for you. So calculus goes out the window because it's not a calculator anymore. You can just do different signs and then it makes a sum. It's just like, why do you need mathematics the same way? Why do you need algebra? Why do you learn how algebra? A computer does it for you.
Yeah, because it's a social norm. It's a conformity piece. At the end of the day, the schooling system I'm probably going to get shot down in flames by those that went through the academic system and smashed it. But ultimately, it's a memory test.
Yeah.
He who has the best memory gets A grades. He who doesn't have such a good memory probably doesn't.
Yeah. And a caveat on top of that, who's actually interested in the subject can be bothered.
Yeah. Certain subjects that I'm fascinated by now, I didn't give two shits about at school.
Yeah.
But now I'm fascinated by them.
Like, you think about now, Ian, think about geography now, your contour lines, whatever on hills and stuff, you probably want to know all about that part to it, because that's probably come in use with your thousands of miles you've done probably this year.
Well, I've got to watch for it. It just tells me what's coming. And it tells me halfway I am up the hill.
So therefore, geography, see ya.
Yeah. I just put it on the hill setting and I'm like, okay, it's a bloody long way.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this, I mean, I don't think that I left school with no grades at all, and I don't think it's that important. Very similar to you, Rob. I've never really cared too much about what the academic grades are for the kids in school. To be fair, both the two girls who've left with feckle and struggling to get jobs now, so maybe I wasn't 100% right in that. But yeah, I don't believe it is, and it makes you think a little bit. So all of the stuff you were taught in school, I think you need a very basic level of maths, English, science, very, very basic levels. But I tell you, the number one skill that's got me through all of my career, regardless of what job I had, was being able to speak to people and communicate. And they don't fucking teach that in schools. And I could have done a class on that only and nothing else, and succeeded far higher than anybody else who was stuck in the classes, because they're all learning how to be workers. I'm learning how to be a fucking boss.
The other thing that I think you do fantastically well and is probably equal to being able to talk to people, and I think I hope everyone on this call is in the same frame of mind, but is the ability to find the answer. I think that's the one thing that probably at school is the most important. It's not, can you do algebra? It's, can you find out how to do algebra in the moment when you need it? Because you might not need it for the next 5 years, but in 5 years' time, when you do need it, can you work out how to do it? Are you prepared to go through the heartache and the challenge of not doing it right until you get to the bit that you do right? That's the bit that school should teach, is when you need the answer, can you work out how to do it? And for me, with business over the last 4 years, most of what I do on a day-to-day basis, I didn't do 10 years ago when I was still an estate agent then. But one thing that it has learned me over the last 4 years is you have to find out how to find the answer. You have to find out how to do it. Tomorrow, we've got a webinar. I don't know how to do the webinar because we've never done the webinar. So when it goes live at 7:30, either the link worked or it didn't. The bit, I can't test it until I'm live because I don't know what happens when we go live. No one else on that webinar has got that responsibility other than me. So I'm shitting my pants because I'm going to have 50 odd people on that webinar expecting a webinar, and I don't know what's going to happen when I press the button.
Love it.
But I am confident in my ability to find out how to do it when I need to do it. And that's the most important skill that I think should come from schooling, is we're going to find out how to work out the answer. And you've got to be determined. You've got to be prepared to get a couple of knockbacks, get frustrated with it, and then get to the result, basically. And it might not be perfect first time, but as long as you've got the answer, you can perfect it later.
I was about to say, your webinar is a perfect example, right? You're going to test it. It could go horribly wrong. It could. Yeah. But then you'll learn from that and it'll be better next time. I think the schooling system, do you get the opportunity to learn from it, or are you just simply given a grade to say, look, you're taking me down memory lane when you're referring to maths. I'm actually naturally quite good at maths. But because I didn't show my workings out, because I don't know how I've worked it out, I just know the answer, I got graded down. My grades were reduced down because I couldn't show my workings out. And I'm like, and that's the school system right there.
I had an argument. I had an argument with the schooling system around, because I was naturally, I liked design, technology, art, and stuff like that. And the thing I'd have arguments with my teachers over is his idea of art and their idea of the D2 was different to my perspective. And the conversations I was having is he would downgrade me, but I was like, to some people, my art is really, really good. People doodle on pieces of paper, and that's worth thousands. So that is their perspective. So your perspective on the grading is different. That's the bit that I always found. There's no in between parts to it. And I think that's where we start to, if you think about the limiting beliefs, the environments. We go back to what Stephen was talking about. If we're naturally told that from a young age, as a developing brain, as our brain's forming in its full entity, all the way through up to our adulthood, those are the things that are literally formed around our environments that we feel like our beliefs are based on, whether we went to school, whether we got GCSEs or A-levels, whatever they're called nowadays, university, and then we almost dropped off the other side without having, like Ian was saying, the tools. Like, here's how to work stuff out, here's to regulate your mind, here's how to get some resilience, and here's how to understand when you fail and overcome that. And those are the tools that we're not taught, hence why we've got a big mental health crisis that's consistently getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and we're trying to medicate it, because that's the bit that you were talking about, James, in between, like the two things. Like, when you're in that moment, what tools do you have in your bank to get through the other side?
Do you know what? I think a really good question that's just risen is, certainly maybe for ourselves, but I'm thinking of the kids right now. I'm thinking, you know, maybe we're already there, but what could we be doing? So basically, what environments or tool stroke lessons do we believe we should be giving our children? Forget about maths, English, science, and what's there currently. Or we bitch about it, we moan about it, and we don't like it. All right. What would you do? What do you think individually? What environments should we be bringing our children up in? What lessons and tools should we be giving them so that they've got the best chance of a great start when it comes to their adult and their start of life?
This is something that I've been pondering recently quite a lot. In a roundabout way, it's the same thing, because I've been interested on why successful people that have got a lot of money talk about the fact that now they've realized their life is about giving back and working with others, and they become strong on charities and stuff like that. And I've really been looking at that, and I've been thinking, that's quite interesting, because when you look at an Experian report, or when you look at the different demographics of people, when you look at older generations that are highly successful, charity is one of the high things that they have on their Experian report. So on an Experian report, it's like a 1, 2, 3, 4 grade. And people that have got old money, if you like, are very high on charity. But if you look at 35 to 40 successful middle-aged people with younger families that live in high houses, that have got high debt, that are high earners, charity is number one. Is very, very low at that point, but they're still earning really good money. And I've been thinking, well, so if that's what these people have uncovered at that age of success, should people not be thinking that way when they're not quite at that level, because they've gone through all of it? Or is it because they've got to that level that now that's their motivator, and actually that's not relevant to the person that's a couple of layers down on, you know, the kind of the pyramid, or whatever kind of model you want to use for it? So with kids, what layer are they at in life? And is this the problem that we have with highly successful kid superstars that jump a whole layer in that pyramid, that jump that whole bit and go, oh, I didn't do that foundation layer, and now I'm fucked, basically, because I'm rich, successful, and I can't handle it? Same with footballers. You know, they kind of, do they jump a layer that's really important? So to answer your question in a roundabout way, is it the layering that is our responsibility? Should we teach our children the raw basics of, Chris Hunt calls it mission critical, breathing, eating, shelter? Then it's the next layer of kind of almost, you know, a bit of self-love and environment and social dynamic and feeling part of something. And then there's the drive to perform and skill and perfect and become successful in some way. And then there's the wealth chapter, where it's like, right, I want to secure and then you've got wealth in, you've got all of that, and you realize, actually, I need to go way back down to the people in layer one and give back to them, which then gets me to the next. So is the answer that you have to tick all of the layers without jumping any of the layers? And that's where people are getting it wrong. And I don't know.
I've got a like, so if you look at something like Maslow hierarchy of needs,
Yeah.
but if you look at like a child one, you have the baseline food and water, but it goes into sort of very, very baseline, like community, sense of belonging. And like you talked about the environments part to it, like you're right in what you're saying. I have the conversations with Kel about this all the time, especially with her role in child development and having a mixture of the lot. So like you have it's not around a calming environment for your home, like, because too much of a good thing means that children then aren't resilience building in the future. So like it's a real balance of trying to work out the layers are a good idea, great idea, because you can think about it from a baseline level, like what does your child need from a baseline level? Sleep, food, are they getting enough community? Are they getting enough this?
So touching on your point around the layers, Ian, because I think visually then that's quite easy to process. And like you say, if we take child stars, actors, footballers, whatever, they go from, let's say, layer 1 to layer 4, however we're counting them up. I do then think the environments become the mission critical bit, because if a child star, let's use football as the point to prove here, Ravel Morrison, Alex Ferguson tipped him as one of the best footballers he'd ever experienced. And that was at a time where Ronaldo had existed, Rooney, etc. But Ravel Morrison surrounded himself with delinquents. And so therefore crashed and burned, because he took all his pals from school, all these little hangers-oners, took them with him.
Momentary freeze.
Momentary freeze.
But I know what he means.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure I'll come back round in a second, but I know what he means. It's something that, answering your question, Dave, for me, when you hear these superstars, you know, Gary V's or the Bill Gates and people, you know, and celebrities as well, that are like, really life is about giving back. Well, it is for you, but it may not be for others. And I think that's important. That's an important message. James, sorry, mate, you froze, but we totally got what you were saying. Is if Ravel Morrison is the fish, his environment was not a good pond to be in.
No,
And that screwed up his potential, you know, because he could have been a thoroughbred fish, but he messed it up, you know, and that's very evident, that you can see in any walk of life. And I think it's very common as well, because people take those layers for granted. They haven't necessarily earned them.
If you think about like even outside football and stuff like that, like your Britney Spears, your Michael Jacksons, those Macaulay Culkin, you know what I mean, like those rising superstars that have experienced worldwide fame, had those moments, and then their careers almost got to the point, and it's shit, what happens afterwards, and none of them, they weren't able to live as a child to do particular things, which then created further developmental problems as an adult, wasn't it?
We talk a lot about the everyday man, so I'm just conscious of bringing it back to that level as well.
Yeah, 100%. So the reason I asked the question is I've got a theory behind this, and for me, I think if you look at the Maslow's needs and you look at the children's one, once we get past food, water, the basics that are going to basically keep your heart pumping, then I think it's belief system. I think the biggest problem in the world for people right now is that they think they can't do it for whatever reason. That's it. Whatever the reason is, they just believe that they can't do it. They're not good enough. They weren't born with the right tools or fundamentals to be able to do it and all this type of stuff. My belief is that's all bullshit. Everybody has got the same physical opportunities. Now, I'm not saying somebody in a third world country has the same opportunity as somebody in Manchester or London. Of course, they don't, because of the location of them. But if you put them in the same place physically, they can both do the same shit, unless they've got something wrong with them, which is a very, very small minority of people. But for the most part, 99% of human beings, I believe, can do anything. My belief system that's served me well, I believe, is that I just think I can do everything. I think I can do anything at all that I put my mind to. It just takes time, effort. That's it. If somebody else has done it.
Dave, I think we said you put it on it earlier a little bit though. You know, you talked about your 3 major traumas you had in life.
Yeah.
You said about like, I soon realised I could do anything, but equally at the same time, a lot of people, Ian, you briefly talked about the everyday man. we're told that, you know, we'll probably survive to 80, 90 years old if we're lucky, science and that lot. So everyone seems to think that we've got this long life ahead of us, so we can do everything and anything and achieve something. Whereas early on with your trauma, or very early on, cutting your wrist on a tree at 9 years old, wherever that was, and almost dying, it snaps on you to realize that actually life isn't forever, and I need to work on enjoying every single moment, even that as a belief at the younger age. So
Yeah.
the views like, doesn't matter what people have told me, I'm living in the now, I'm just going to go and crack on with it.
But honestly, mate, yeah, could well be. Yeah.
A lot of us don't receive that, or don't achieve that, and that's where you tend to find, you know, when you start to see relatives or people pass away, and as you get older,
Yeah.
start to have that realization of going, is this the life I want to live?
Yeah. Do you think we
I
should
want
earlier though, Rob? That's the question. So, do you think we should be? The question is, what's right? Am I right in saying everyone's got the same opportunity, or am I scientifically wrong?
I think everyone has the same opportunity. I think it's down to the going back to what we talked about, the fish and the environments.
Yeah.
Like if you think about it, like even from a young age, how we communicate, which we said is one of the big things out there.
Yeah.
Seem to things on things like your children. A child is not a naughty child; it's naughty behaviour.
Yeah.
So little things like that compounding. So like if you keep telling your kid you're a naughty kid, the kid's going to grow up thinking it's naughty and it's worthless.
Yeah.
But you're saying that's bad behaviour. We need to work on that. That brings that self-awareness. I'm doing bad behavior. How do I rectify that?
Yeah.
Schooling environments. I feel like if we change the schooling system, we'll change how a lot of people see themselves.
And what would you teach them, Rob? What would your tools or implements be? What are you trying to teach your kids now?
So at the moment, like kids, obviously the beauty of Kel being a child behavioural specialist, that's what he works in. So even I did a podcast the other day, and I was learning stuff from the podcast as well. So I've got gifts of that element to it. But I'm doing things like today, for example, Erin and Ted both asked me to go cold feet. So they get in the cold pub and they put their cold feet in there. They take out and they put their feet back in, and they go grounding, and they were trying to ground with me outside, do the grounding. So these are little things that I work on. And also we've learned things like even from a brain level, they don't understand sharing yet until the age of 4. So you can't turn around and say you need to share this. They don't understand it, but they understand the concept of taking turns.
Mm-hmm.
So giving, you're allowing that time, those little things like that we're just building on. And like Ian was saying, it is a foundational level. Like you build those little micro understanding as the brain develops more. What can they understand actually in their brain to actually comprehend it and program it? The main thing I'm proud of is that I'm developing children that can think for themselves and be confident in themselves and feel like they can take on the world.
Amazing. Yeah.
Are we pointing the finger at the schooling system too aggressively here? Because what we're talking about there and what that's the role of a parent, no?
Yes.
It's not the teacher's job to teach those life skills to my daughters. It's my job. So the kids that often it goes back to the fish, the environment. Normally the naughty kids at school or the problematic kids at school, it's not the teacher's fault. It's at home is the fault.
Yeah.
And I don't know. And sometimes you find, you know, if you get further down the schooling career, you get into secondary school. There's a lot of the rebellious nature comes from split families, problems with dad or problems with mum, or you know, it's normally the home stuff that really triggers it, not the school stuff. Like there is issues with the school system, but I'm just conscious on this that there also has to be some accountability for the parents as well, especially at the younger ages, because I don't always know that I think parents have got a little bit too busy. I think they're a bit too screen heavy, you know, on their own phone. I commonly will sit with the kids at a park or soft play or a birthday party, and the kids trying to talk to them, and they're not even like meh, 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 you know, making noises. I think also there's a place for us, and we talk about it a lot, but I think there's a place for us there is no manual in being a parent, is there? So that's why it's not easy, because you haven't got a blueprint to follow. But you kind of, what we're saying here, you kind of need to like create your blueprint. You know, to start a business, you have a business plan. If you want to launch a business, you need a marketing plan. You need a blueprint to follow. Otherwise, you're just a busy fool. So if you don't have a blueprint, if you want to run your first ever marathon, you need a plan to follow to do it well, or you'll fail. And then if you want to build a life where at 55 you can retire and be self-sufficient financially, or financially free, as the kind of Instagram bullshit phrase says, then you need a plan to follow. And as a parent, there isn't that, is there really? I think, is that the biggest issue here, more than the school?
I think that's fair. I would say that actually a lot of what Rob has said, and then you saying about when you go to soft play and bits, it's like so relatable. When, like, the other day we took the kids to soft play. My little boy's 4 in September. Margot's 2.5. Went to soft play the other day, and me and Hayley, it was heaving. Me and Hayley were the only, literally, I turned round and me and Hayley were the only parents in there playing with our kids. Every other parent was either sat chatting to someone else or literally head down in their phone. And I suppose I've looked at it and kind of tried to simplify it as much as possible. And I've gone, I need to teach my kids, but equally give them the respect that they deserve. Like, I don't want to bring my kids up the way, I love my parents dearly and I miss my mum every day. But I also don't want to bring my kids up the way I was brought up. I don't want to be brought up as the seen and not heard. Respect your elders. I don't agree with it, because ultimately they deserve a level of respect. Otherwise, don't have them. Like, if an adult approached me and I'm on my phone, then I will give them the courtesy of putting my phone down and listening to what they've got to say. Why does a child not deserve the same courtesy?
Especially your own child.
Especially your own child. I mean, for Christ's sake, there's no one on this planet that's more important than your own child. So yeah, I'm totally with you on that.
There's two parts to it. There's I keep coming back to generational trauma, and that's not an aggressive. We talk about what Stephen said, like micro traumas, beliefs. That's what I class as in that, and then bigger traumas, and the environments of schooling, because the kids are forced to go to school pretty much X amount of days, and they're being told, and the teachers that are in there. That's, again, it's not the schooling system; it's the teachers, the people in there. The people are like, if you're a crap teacher and you hate your job, don't fucking teach kids, because you're gonna every year going to be putting through that cycle of all these kids that you're just going to screw up, like, because, and that's the bit. So again, the school part should be more based around a partnership between parent and child, like that part to it, but also it shouldn't be based on academic. You need to get this, and that's the effective of the school. It should be based around the environments that the school deliver. And I feel like there should be more investment into parenting, like an educational part of like how to help parents understand their navigation. And that's not you've got to take a course and you're a failure, yes, but it's talking about child tantrums, how to communicate with a child, bedtime, sleep routines, feeding them, all sorts of stuff out there. It should be more available out there for parents to actually come through. But it all comes back to it. If you want to be a good parent, you want to change, you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to have a good life, it comes back to you.
Yeah. What do you want?
Yeah. Like I said before, people who know better do better. The downside is with a large proportion, they just don't know. We just mentioned generational trauma. Rob mentioned it then. We look at some parents now in the 20s, 30s who got brought up by their parents who didn't have a clue either. They got, beaten up by their fathers or whatever else. This trauma's gone on, and now we're talking. The downside is those types of people won't even hear this podcast because they're not interested. They don't know that there's an issue. They won't even listen to it. Unfortunately, it's normal to them. That is life. When I drank for all those years, I used to wake up every morning hungover and think that was just how everybody woke up. This is how you wake up in the morning. I didn't know any different until I did. And I think that's what it is. It's a huge saying. People who know better do better. Like we talk about the kids. It's not a naughty child. What is happening to make that child like that? What's going on in the environments outside? So, I mean, we're trying to fight a battle here, which is huge, and we're massively outnumbered, guys. It's pretty clear to see. But what are the fundamentals? What are the fundamentals of a human being successfully living a good life? We will continue to uncover.
It only takes baby steps to create a movement, though, Dave. Like, if you imagine,
Right, mate. That's why we're here. Yeah.
if you imagine 20 years ago, podcasts existing, 30 years ago, probably, you wouldn't probably get four blokes that all are in the positions we are in within business and in life, all talking the way we're talking. I don't believe it was even a thing.
No, I
Talking
think
about the change, talking about being more emotionally intelligent, talking about being more supportive around children, giving them the respect they deserve. So there is change. It's just, like you say, getting the message out there and trying to spread it as far and wide as we possibly can.
The other thing that I'm noticing a lot with peak performers, successful people, is they all seem to mention at some point a mentor. They always seem to mention that single person. Stephen mentioned it, he had his mentor that he spoke about. And while we're talking about this subject, I guess for people, they're like, well, what's the answer? How do I become the answer? If you really, really, really like want to be the best parent you can, visualize your child in 20 years' time saying the reason I did X as the most successful thing they've done in their life was because of my mentor, and that mentor not being you, because it can be you or it can't be you depending on your actions. So if your kid is super successful and you've done everything you can as a parent and you become their mentor, like it was 50 years ago, parents, or even 150 years ago, 250 years ago, everything was taught on from the grandparent, the parent. They were the mentors, tribal days, the elder, the mentor. Well, do you want to be your kid's mentor or not? Do you want to be the reason your kid is successful, and do you want to be their mentor or not? And that really, if that is 100% where you are, what time have you got in your diary to be that?
Yeah. And if you're not that now, you've got to, how could you learn to be that?
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good point, mate. Really do.
It's got me thinking, like what time allocation, like Rob's talking about there. What are we really, really putting in for those characteristics? And, going all the way back to what we said about reports and intelligence and stuff like that. The way that the school that Grace goes to design their reports is great. I really like it. They have a teacher's comment, like a top paragraph. It's about a third of the report. And then they have the grading system, in different types of more academic things, handwriting, storytelling, maths, etc. I don't really care about the bottom half. For me, it's, as a person, what is Grace? And after I've read that paragraph, the rest is not really that relevant to me, especially not at 8 years old. But her behaviors and her characteristics and how she is as a personality that the teacher sees when she's out of my sight, that's all I care about. And if it's great and it's what I want to see, and she's encouraging others and she's caring and she's willing to put her hand up and she's willing to try things, completed it. That's what it's about for me. If she gets a couple of D's and a couple of E's in her GCSEs, but she's a good person, she'll be fine at life. That won't make the difference. I can't spell for shit. Put an Excel sheet in front of me, I dare another estate agent on the planet to be as good at me at creating formulas in Excel, because there won't be. But I can't spell for shit. Someone needs to proof my posts, and I do a lot of posts. Like, thank God for Grammarly.
That's where technology comes into it.
Exactly. Yeah.
But go back to your question, Dave. I know we're near the end now, but I think the one response I would give, and it ties into what Ian said, what you've said, and what Rob has said. I think one of the major skills that is going to become even more nullified because of the era we're moving into, so tech-led, AI-led, is the ability to communicate human to human. And I think if that becomes more prominent again, more mainstream, we'll have kids, less of this walking down the street with headphones on, not even lifting their head. And we'll have much more, like Ian said there, if Grace comes out of school with D's and E's, but she's a good human being and she can communicate, then Grace is going to win at life.
Yep.
And I feel the same way about my kids. Their grades ultimately aren't going to dictate their trajectory, but if I can bring them up in such a way that they're going to be good human beings, they can communicate well, they've got empathy, they can demonstrate. See, this is something that I came across the other day. So growing up, we're dependent, aren't we? When we're a very young age, we're dependent on our parents to survive. Then we're taught to be independent. It's very much like, you need to grow up and you need to do this and you need to do that and you need to go and get a house and you need to get a job and this, that, the other, and you need to be independent. But no one ever teaches adults or adolescents how to become interdependent. So if you think about when you first get into a relationship or you go into business with people, no one actually helps people understand how to be interdependent. And that's not reliant upon someone else. That's the ability to work as a team back and forth. And I think that's something else that would be worth adults. And I think a lot more relationships could withstand the test of time if interdependence were to be better understood. So I think communication and interdependence are the two things for me that I'm really intent on trying to make sure my children have at their core.
Yeah.
I think I saw a post the other day and it basically said everything is based on attachment. When you're talking about that part, attachment is behavioral communication, all of it. Like if you're sitting there thinking about listening about it, thinking, oh, what should I come away from it? Look at attachment theories, because that'll give you everything about that. Co-regulation, how you attach with each other, how your attachment styles are. Are you attached via basically your parenting from your environments? And you'll start to learn really from the first part, actually, what is my attachment? What is my attachments in my life? Why do I feel the way I do? And why do I communicate? And why do I come in like a parent state or a child-like state where I don't get my way or a particular way? So definitely one to take away. Good point there, James, because interdependent states are bits where we always struggle with.
Yeah.
And that's a very interesting way to end, because I don't think you guys have, obviously I was part of the interview, but you guys haven't seen part 2 yet, have you? But technically, Rob, what you've done there is given people a preview as to what Stephen will talk about in part 2 of the interview. The 5 ego states, you called it attachment, but the 5 ego states, co-regulation, interdependence, all this sort of good stuff. So guys, another absolutely incredible episode. I've certainly taken away some sound bites from you guys. The episode was brilliant. I really enjoyed being a part of it. I've had quite a few messages, I don't know about you guys, quite a few messages from people that I know that have listened in and gone, okay, when's part 2? Because I'm in. So really excited to release that. That will be going out next Friday, Rob.
Next Friday. And another point on it, I'd say, is the last part is watch the video. Like, if you haven't watched the episode, get on YouTube and have a watch of it, because that, again, that calming part that we talk about, a lot of that comes from the settings and the environments. You can really see what Stephen's environment in his own life is like as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So part 2, different setting next time as well. So we filmed it in a way whereby, it's a change of scenery, mixing it up a little bit. So yeah, coming out next Friday, which will be the last Friday of July. Or will it be the first Friday of August? I think it will be. So until next time, thanks for joining us.